I would like to move to our next speaker, who is Suzanne Daniels, who is a developer lead for Backstage at Spotify. Suzanne's passion is finding ways to help developers and engineers get the tools and skills to do what they do best, creating the software this world runs on while trying to innovate and make sense of buzzwords at the same time. So what I'm suggesting is that we're going to hear a lot of buzzwords, but hopefully, Suzanne, you're going to show us how are those buzzwords implemented in big companies like Spotify and others, right? Awesome. So I leave the stage to you. Thanks, Suzanne, for being here today. And an applause for me.
Thank you. Thank you. So everybody having a good time? Already looking forward to the lunch, or still enough energy for one more talk? Yeah? Ooh, that's not that good. Come on. Still a bit of energy for one more talk. Ah, thank you. I'm also struggling. I'm so hungry. Okay, so hi folks, nice to meet you. I'm Suzanne Daniels. I work at Spotify leading developer relations for an open source project called Backstage. What? Spotify? Open source project? Developers? I'm gonna get into that. I'm also a Microsoft MVP in developer technologies. And well, this is my bragging moment, so I'm always enjoying that to say it. But I want to get to know you as well. And I have some questions for you. So who in the past few years wow. I'm just going to stand here, okay? I am not going to move anymore, which is hard. Who in the past few years onboarded in an engineering role at a company? So, past 5 years, you know, you onboarded in a role, yeah? So who actually enjoyed onboarding as an engineer? Yeah, that's not that many people, okay. Who can find all the information that they need to do their jobs properly? Okay, you've come to the right session. That's the good news. The bad news is that I recognize this. Being a developer nowadays is so complex. There's the technology, which is super advanced, but the problems we're trying to solve are also becoming increasingly complex. Collaborating. Yeah, you can't like create a good piece of software nowadays on your own. You need people with different experience from different knowledge domains. You need to be able to collaborate. But how to collaborate in this fast-moving environment? How to keep up with the technology and make sure that you talk the same language, that you can actually collaborate. And then where's the time? You spend, well, not a lot of time actually on writing code. You're probably in meetings. Sure, coding is not the only thing a developer should do, but the amount you want to spend on coding oftentimes gets lost as well, because you're looking for documentation, because you need a tool to work with the technology that you're using. You need to context switch all the time. It costs a lot of time, valuable time. So today here, I'm going to share the secret sauce of Spotify. How do we make developers happy? How do we do this? How do we provide our service on so many platforms or client devices? A lot has been written about Spotify. Besides being a music app, we have a great engineering culture. People are oftentimes inspired by this. Who knows of the Spotify model? Yeah, exactly. Well, this is, I intentionally put this up this way because it's complex. But yeah, we're known because of the Spotify model. It's basically comes down to having autonomous teams, and we're just figuring out ways to collaborate. And we published a very successful white paper. But how do we actually make this work? So let's go back a little bit into time. When Spotify was a monolith app. It ran on servers. There was a small team. And the management, everything that we had around documentation, it all came down to spreadsheet management. We had spreadsheets and we were able to find what was running on which server, and the servers even had a name, and we also knew the names of the engineers. It was such a small team that we could fit in a van and go drive to, bowling Friday evening. Then it's not that hard to collaborate. But over time, we grew. The app became more complex. There were more services needed. Eventually, technology evolved. We moved to microservices architecture. The teams didn't no longer fit in a van. It was basically a small village that we had running around there. Collaborating became increasingly complex, so the tooling needed to be adjusted as well. You can't use spreadsheets in a growing organization. So what we did was being an engineering company, we built a CMDB ourselves. Because who can do that better, And it's fun. So we tried to solve a problem there, and that was great because we were able to find out who was managing a service, who was running on call for that service. We could find pointers to who to contact if you had questions. So we were able still to collaborate, and we could find the information that we needed. But of course, there was also documentation. Of course, it was also quite an effort. You needed to reach out to somebody and to try to understand more about the service or try to find the most recent updated version of the documentation. And yeah, over the years, Spotify grew. We became in a hyper-growth situation. And around that time, onboarding became hyper-confusing. It was hard to find the information. You needed so much tribal knowledge to get the work done. And there was just no time. So we were adding engineers to the organization, but with each engineer that we added, we actually slowed down. More new knowledge domains were added. Suddenly, an application also needed specialists on data and machine learning and whatnot. When we created the service, we also needed a back-end service, needed an API, needed documentation. So a lot of systems and functionalities were introduced to solve that problem. But yeah, that was chaos. It was so hard to get the work done. So what did we do? Well, what a lot of companies do. We figured, let's build a portal for that, which will solve all our problems. So we put together a team and said, hey, go create that portal. And they did, and it was a big success. The portal was called System Z, and the Z stands for everything, so it would solve all our problems. But having one team creating a portal and thus the developer experience for the whole organization doesn't work that well. Why? Well, because those were engineers who created software and they were good at that, but didn't necessarily had all the knowledge that the people in certain domains had, like data engineering. There was no place for a data pipeline. There was no place for anything related to machine learning. So it had to be extended. And the tooling was not there, so it had to be extended. And everything came in that one portal. And the portal became slow because it was a monolith. It was hard to collaborate because everybody depended on the time that that one team had. So that was not that good. And what happens when you have this great portal and you want to use it, maybe for your self-service functionality, and you can't put it in just because you're a little bit different, you don't fit in that portal yet? You go around it. You build your own. You build your own self-service portal because the problem needs to be fixed, right? We're all engineers. We fix problems. So that happened, and that added more fragmentation. Yeah, that was not that good. So we figured we need to do this differently. So what we did was, well, we're a consumer business. We're good at understanding customers. So what we did was we created an approach which was the same as we had for our customers. So we needed to understand our developer population. We needed to understand better their needs and do research, and actually, in all aspects, treat them as customers. So we decided to prioritize our developers and their experience, and we wanted to give them the best possible experience. And for that, a few things needed to happen. So what we found out is that, for instance, if you look at what people really, really need to do their jobs properly and be effective, they need to have speed, but they want to keep, in general, the safety, compliancy. You want to make sure that everything's safe. You want to scale, but you do not want to lose the quality. And chaos. Now, it says chaos control. I don't like controlling chaos. I think it's more embracing chaos, because chaos is where the innovation happens. It is all that tooling that you have, all that frameworks. It will not go away. It will not become less complex over time, because there will be a new thing and a new thing. And you need to be able to accept that that's true, but in a good way. So what we figured is that portal is good, but let's burn it down and build it again from the ground up. So what we did was we created this portal, and it was actually built as a platform. So we had one central team who manages that platform, and then every piece of functionality is a plugin. That way, we could decentralize the development of this platform and actually make sure that each and every one who had knowledge or managed the tool could create a plugin and add functionality to it, and create a developer portal together. So it was also rewritten in TypeScript, which was easier to learn. Most of the people already knew. So that also really, really made the collaboration better. And that was a great success. So over 80% of the contributions in Backstage, they come from outside of the core team. And the core team, that's 5 to 6 people. Over 120 plugins have been contributed and are still used today. And that works great for us, because suddenly everybody could find the information. And then we figured during a hack week, what if we open sourced this? And it was actually the winning project in the hack week, and we decided to go ahead and do it. So we open sourced Backstage, and it became a part and was donated to the Cloud Native Computing Foundation. So we've been a sandbox project for about 2 years, and now we're in the incubator stage, which means that there's still a lot of work to do, but we're growing up as a project. And it shows there's over 500 companies that we know of that adopted Backstage. We have a vibrant community, and over 60 plugins have been created in open source already. And they're growing, and also vendors are now creating plugins for in Backstage to improve the developer experience. And that adds a lot of value when you adopt Backstage. But there's of course more. Because if you want to have a good developer experience, you can maybe think of that within your organization. If you have that collaboration going on internally, you can leverage that knowledge, and you can leverage the platform. That's great. But with an open source project, you have the whole community. That's those 500 companies, which translates to over 1 million developers using Backstage. And they bring in a lot of knowledge in the open source project. Not only about how to build a portal or how to create plugins. No, also about how do you do proper developer experience. How do you do platform engineering in your company? And also, of course, the open source contributions, which enhance the project itself. You benefit of those. And you can also give it back to the community. It's fun to engage in this community and be able to provide something back. But yeah, maybe we want to see what this is actually about, because this is quite theoretic, right? So who wants a demo? No? Okay. Okay. Then I'm gonna try and do that. Cool. So for this, yeah, there's this story. I'm a developer, and I was hired at this company, Rocket. It's an interstellar space travel company, Uber for space. Okay, with rockets. No? Maybe I should add lasers then next time. But anyways, so I'm onboarding there, and I got my shiny new laptop. And I open it up, and then the real onboarding starts. And it starts with a thing that is called the golden path. Now, maybe you use something like this at your company, but this is a best practice that we have, at least also at Spotify, and this company decided to adopt it. And this golden path is a set of documents which helps me onboard. From the beginning to the end. So first, understanding what is this whole backend service, how does this relate to each other, what is my place in this organization, and then goes through setting up my local dev environment, getting my tools configured, towards actually releasing a piece of software. Using the services and the interfaces I would use in my day-to-day job. Which is pretty exciting, because if I follow this whole guide, I go through creating a service, creating a big table, creating some data pipelines here and there, then actually deploying the service. And in the end, it will be some sort of hello world, not that useful application, but it would resemble what a real application would look like. The steps I would need to know. In my first week, I've already launched the service, which is great. And during that golden path, it introduces me to this tool called Backstage, because that is what they use in this company. So I already know also how to actually translate the things I know to this portal and where to find what, which is super valuable. So I know a little bit more now about this company, about my work. The next thing I'm going to do is discover a little bit what actually are we building here. So for this, I go to the catalog, which is the place where each and every service or other things that you can imagine would show up. With, of course, the filter functionality, but I'm in this case, interested in the app I am hired to work on, which is the Launch app. Now I need to enlarge this probably a little bit. Is that readable? That's readable, okay. So not confused with the Launch app. So this is the application I'm working on. And when I click it, I come to the entity page, which is sort of like the home page for my microservice in this case, my web app. And it shows me immediately some useful information, like who's the owner. I can create an incident. I can skip immediately to either the repo or the documents. I use GitHub security insights. I have here some a very interesting graph from Prometheus, which is, of course, the most random thing I could find. But it shows me also the relationships to the other tools, to the other components that it uses. Well, there's way more to see here. I could filter and dig down into relationships, but these are the most important ones. I manage an application, it's part of a system, and it leverages an API called Flight Info. Each card you see here is actually a plugin. Backstage is not to replace your tool, it is to integrate with it. And it displays that information on your screen in a useful manner, so that you do not need to context switch and go to another tab, look for your phone when you get that multi-factor authentication thing going on, but see actually the information that is really, really valuable to you. And there's a lot of these. So there's over 60 plugins. I think we're already almost at 80 actually. With various tools. So probably there's some logo you would recognize here of stuff that you use in your company. Basically, it's like a Lego. You just put on the bricks and you create a developer experience with it. So the next thing I'm gonna look at as an example is my pipelines. So what I'm most interested in is which jobs have run and what is the result. Is it red or green is mostly what I'm interested in. If it's red, I could click it and I could dig down in it. So in this case, we're using GitHub Actions, and I could see which step is failing. So I have a general idea where to go to solve this problem. This service runs on Azure, so I'm also leveraging the Azure plugin, which gives me direct links to the resource groups, but also any other tags that are useful for this application, and it shows me the security recommendations. Now you could display this information in any place within the portal, but putting it behind the tab is for me really good because it's otherwise too much information, which is also not good. So yeah, there's many different plugins, and most of them offer like information for a small card and information which you would normally put on a page. In this example, it's rootly. But yeah, let's take a look. So I understand a little bit more of the application. I've read the documentation. I checked the repo. So the next thing I'm going to do is try to extend the application. So for that, I need to understand a bit more of the API, which has a comparable entity page with also showing the relationships. So as you can see, there's another app using this API. I see that the flight core team manages this, which is another team. But what I'm most interested in is in the Swagger style documentation, because that is what helps me understand more of this API. And if I want to dive deeper into it, in the same place, there's also, of course, the documentation. So far, so good. I have a better understanding. So the next thing I want to show you is what would happen if I would want to create a new application. Because I'm hired, I have all the time in the world yet. I'm not that productive, so I'm gonna choose to create a new application. And for this, I'm gonna use something that we call software templates. Software templates is a way to basically create anything, but in one experience. So for creating a new application, you need to spin up services. You need to put in configure the observability, security. There's all kinds of things that you need to do, and oftentimes multiple tools that you need to use. Spin up an environment. Oh yeah, I have Terraform. Oh yeah, the application. Oh yeah, let's go to GitHub to create a template, to use a template to create a new app. So putting everything in one place to do basically anything you need to do, that really helps me, because now I only have to focus on what I want to do, and that is actually work on this application. So for this example, I'm gonna create a React app, and I'm gonna give it a name. I'm gonna go with Kalimera, because that's the only Greek word I know. There you go. I'm gonna choose a team. Because an owner is always a team. It's about the metadata. You don't want the whole company to bother with your metadata. Next up, I'm gonna choose the host. So I'm gonna go with GitHub Enterprise today, and for that I need to use my corporate name there, and I'm gonna create a new repository. Yeah, and this is of course the developer advocate hello world kind of scenario. But there's a lot of interesting demos as well from both Spotify but also other adopters who show how much things you can actually do with this, how powerful it is. Because nobody likes to create a ticket, nobody likes to go to a CLI and type commands. and switch between portals to see if it was successful or not. Add it to the catalog in this case. So all these steps will happen. Which brings me to a fun fact. So at Spotify, using this is not mandatory, by the way. But almost everybody uses this. And the reason why is you get so much stuff for free. You get free observability. Your pipeline is configured without knowing anything about it. You can create your whole environment without knowing anything about the cloud provider it runs on. So all these things come out of the box, and that is why people love to use it. And sometimes it doesn't fit the scenario, yeah, then you start building stuff yourself. But if that's successful, oftentimes those contributions come back to the software templates. So that gives a general idea of 3 use cases, and that is creating software, managing software, so finding out what is where, and also explore. Now, one thing I wanted to show you as well is the search functionality. So you're thinking probably, oh, that tech docs and having your documentation in one place, that means that I need to migrate everything, and that always fails, right? Migrating documents. So, well, we have the same problem always. So what you can do is also leverage the search functionality and extend it to search in multiple places, so that you can, well, not actually search the documents, but find the right documents. So make it search in Confluence, just so that you have that one place where you can find anything. So for instance, this search will go through everything which is related to this. So also, for instance, the application. But it will also find the documentation. It can also search on Confluence for relevant stuff. This is going to take forever. Ooh. I hope nobody's hungry. No. I don't know. Let's just trust me that in the end it will deploy. I tested it just before I went up on stage. Anyways. So, yeah, other examples. This is, for instance, Tech Radar, which shows you what technologies to use or refrain from, which ones we are trying to phase out, and get that general idea. There's some other fun things, like this is an example of cost management, yay FinOps, which you can also display per your service, so that if you manage a service, you can actually see what the costs are. And one of the fun things that is built in there is that you can choose also to display the number of engineers, because I don't care about money, I care about how much engineers would I be able to hire or keep, well, when I bring the cost of my service down. But yeah, you can create plugins yourself as well. So there's a CLI command which you can run. It's the create plugin CLI command, and it will basically give you a whole template which you can use to start developing your own plugin and integrating it with your service, with your services that you use if there's none available. So creating a plugin takes anywhere between a few hours and a number of days. And if you want to write a backend application, probably it will take you longer because of the complexity. But everything comes out of the box. So this is basically what you get when you deploy it, and you can make it grab information from an API and use that. Yeah, so that gives a bit of an overview of Backstage. Quite on time as well. But I hear you thinking, we are not Spotify. Why do we need this? Well, first of all, I was telling about modern life as a developer. It's complicated, technology is evolving quite rapidly. It's hard to make sense of all these things. There's multiple languages, multiple frameworks, multiple toolings. This is the CNCF landscape, which is super complex, but this is only the CNCF, right? This is only open source related to CNCF. This is not all your cloud vendors. This is not all those other companies that try to create tooling to help you, the open source projects, which are not part of the CNCF. Yeah, as an employee, when you join a company, you want to develop stuff, then basically everybody's saying, use this service for that, use this service for that. It looks a bit like the ads you see when you are walking in a metro station. Does anybody pay attention to the ads? No, you don't. It's too much. It's hard to make sense of that, and you need to learn every one of those tools to do your job properly. Another point is that you want to be effective. And what we figured out is that if you look at effectiveness, there's this part of productivity, and productivity is more about, hey, I don't want to do that much, but I want to build great stuff. Without too much effort, I want to be faster, I want to be better. You also measure it probably. You know the DORA metrics. Well, you know, those come up during your probably performance talks. Those are all ways to measure what you are doing. How productive are you? And of course, Backstage, for instance, will help you. It will help you become more productive because you will not spend that much time on finding the right information. It will help you deploy faster. But it can also help you by displaying those metrics to you so that you can see how are you doing, how's your team doing. But the other part, developer happiness, and this is what it's really about. Because if you look at productivity or you look at metrics, and you look at all those metrics that can go up when you're really productive, it doesn't tell you anything about the quality. It doesn't tell you anything about if you are enjoying your job. It doesn't tell you anything about the quality of the work you are delivering. And if you have a super productive engineer on your team, might as well running into a burnout. So happiness is important to look at the broader picture. So that is about, am I able to do my job properly? Can I understand and can I collaborate with the rest of my team? There needs to be a sense of belonging, and you need something to provide that. A portal like Backstage can really, really help you there. Why? Because it is unified. It is one interface. And the real thing that Backstage tries to do is to aggregate everything that you have, the tooling, and display it in a consistent manner, which is accessible to anyone. Finding the information so that everybody can talk the same language, that everybody can gain the right knowledge to do the job properly. Offering functionality to collaborate internally. If you need help on a project, there's a marketplace plugin. And with a marketplace plugin, you can say, hey, we're doing a migration and we need somebody for 2 sprints or maybe 2 months or maybe a year. Being able to do that internally and have that inner sourcing going on is really, really powerful. And it can help you. Because if you see what options are there for you and that you can work on this exciting project, that empowers you. So happiness is about all those other things, which are not cranking out code or doing releases. That's distracting. The bottom line is, happy developers make happy code. If you don't need to context switch, if you can do your job properly, if you feel empowered to do the job, if you are able to improve your own experience and those of others in your company, makes you happy. If you don't invest in developer happiness, then you still probably will have a happy developer, like this guy here, but walking away with a box in his hands, away from your office. Then you need to hire a new one. Nah. You don't want that. You want to be happy, right? So to summarize, Backstage is one front end for your entire developer experience. It is not there to replace your tools. It is not there to be a single source of truth. It is there to aggregate all those single sources of truth you have in your company. So Backstage is an interface. Autonomy is important. You wanna drive that autonomy. And there's this sense of ownership. So you build a plugin and you own the plugin. So you're responsible for it. So if you are in a certain knowledge domain and you want to provide value to the rest of the company or your own team or everyone, you build it and you own it. So yeah, we've gone over this. So Backstage is there. There's 3 basic use cases that we always talk about. I'll come back on that later. It's not mandatory. Backstage is made up of plugins. That's why we call it a platform. So that's not that you can just like go to host it and no. It's a platform in the sense that you build it out with your plugins. That was the success at Spotify. And it works for 500 other companies in this world. So there's 3 types of plugins. The first type displays information. It's the top one. Then there's the most common scenario, and that is leveraging information from an API or sending back information to an API to make stuff happen. It leverages our proxy, which is built in. And then there's the example. Well, if you need more, you can basically build your application in Backstage. So you build a backend application and create a front end to display that information to your users. And the backend application can use anything like databases or whatever. So yeah, where do you start? Well, small. Try to find one problem to tackle and start from there, build it out. Gain confidence and gain knowledge with a small team. This is an open source project, and Backstage, you really need to invest some time in building this developer portal. You do it yourself. It is not entirely off the shelf. You need to glue it together. But if you gain that knowledge about the project, how to interact, how to upgrade, how to create stuff, then you go bigger and you share that knowledge. Because to make a good developer experience, you need a community. And you need to form a community around this developer experience. And that, in the end, will help you expand with new plugins, with new knowledge domains, and that will drive the adoption that you need. Like basically for any tool. If you don't want to use the standard plugins, you can also ignore them and use Backstage as a framework. There's a talk, somebody told me to mention this. Hey, see you. But it's already a great framework. And you can leverage already that whole framework and build your own tool in there. And then maybe later add some functionality, maybe later add a catalog, but you don't need to. It's all plugins. And that brings me to the end of this presentation. I hope that you gained a better understanding of what Backstage is. My main takeaway, by the way, is even if you're like, I don't know about that Backstage, please invest in your developers to make them happy. And I hope that I've inspired you to do so. Yeah, you can scan the QR code for more information, and the getting started should get you up within anywhere between 20 and 40 minutes. And Spotify, my employer, is also launching a paid plugin bundle with battle-tested plugins we created at Spotify, which can also be really valuable. Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Susan, for the presentation. I would like to ask you firstly a few things about your experience with Backstage. Was it hard to integrate it? The kick-off usage of it, was it hard?
Was it hard to? Sorry?
To use it, when you first began to use it.
Yeah, no, I had the general engineering onboarding. So like the story I told, my onboarding was pretty much like you've seen here. So actually I did two. So first I went to the backend engineering onboarding, which I thought was fun. And it was really easy to leverage it. But I was a bit intimidated by the number of plugins. Because before I joined, I knew about the open source one.
Okay.
But then, yeah, I saw the real thing, and it's like, those people built everything in it. But yeah, now I'm used to that idea, and I'm first looking in Backstage, and then try to solve it.
You praise the software. It sounds amazing.
Yeah, it is.
Do we have any questions for Suzanne? Yes. Let's see. So, Spotify serves as a role model for DevOps adoption. From your point of view, how did you experience this change within the organization?
Yeah, so how we are organized is always evolving. So it's a constant change. And that is something that you need to accept. That whatever you know that you're doing, it will change. So it's not that, like, I talked about the Spotify model. If you read the white paper, and if you haven't, I highly recommend doing that. But there's this line which says, by the time you're reading this, probably we don't work like this anymore. And that's true, because we always try to improve. And what I noticed the most is that that is really something that everybody likes to invest in. Something's not working, you talk about it and you try to improve it, and if you need help, there's help, and it's really a awesome experience, but also something to get used to, I think.
Okay, yeah. Understood. About the second question, product roadmap usually stands in the way of the developer experience. How did you convince the company, board, to invest time and money to this endeavor?
Yeah, that's a good question. So, like I explained in the beginning of my talk, we were growing, and while we were growing, the productivity didn't really go up. The fragmentation increased. There was a real need to invest in this. Like, it was so clear to the leadership that this just didn't work anymore. That if we would continue, it would be really, really bad. And Backstage was born out of necessity, and luckily, it's open source now, and we like travel the world to talk about these things. There is now something that you can use already, and you don't have to like have the same experience as we had. But yeah, it was a necessity, basically. We needed to do something. And treating our developers as customers, yes, that is a big investment, but it really, really pays off.
Okay, and the last one. So it is important to give value and monetize the user's experience from 360 degrees, so like from all angles. What do you think is the simplest model to humanize the corporate and the business world? I would say this is a more philosophical one.
Yeah, that's a good one. The simplest model to humanize the corporates and the business world. Investing in your culture is mainly the thing. If I talk to adopters, oftentimes we talk about adoption, and we talk then mostly about culture. So how do you actually help to create that value? How do you actually help to talk about something like happiness, which is of course very fluffy. But luckily there's also some big progress being made. For instance, there is this one thing, and this is just one thing, I'm not maybe the expert on this. One thing that I know of that is really helpful is also the space model. So there's a framework created by the University of Victoria and some people from Microsoft, GitHub and whatnot. Sorry if you're here. But they created this framework, and it looks at all the angles that are there, and they dive really deeper into things like purpose and happiness, and with some great documentation on how to look at it. I think those kinds of investments and those kinds of developments, that really will help you to actually be more human in our work.
It's not just having the tools, you need to have the culture as well.
A tool is just a tool. Backstage is, just a tool. It's what you build with it.
You need the people to integrate it.
Yeah.
You need the people to live in it.
Exactly. Yeah.
You talked about Lego, which makes me happy. So I have one part of the equation there. And also you have a developer relations team that's for your own developers, which is not a very common thing. So congrats on that, and thanks a lot for being here today, Suzanne.
Thank you.
This is our gift for you to remember us from the
Awesome.
conference.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.